We are gonna start this one with a great speech. It's Martin Luther King Day. I might even sing that birthday song. I gotta make sure I have all the lyrics. So here we go. This bad boy's long as fuck. That's okay. Can you see it? Do you have a dream? Fuck yeah. That intermarriage will be a capital punishment. Really? I mean, you have to be warned a lot and, like, everybody be pissed at you. But then, just convert. It's simple as that.
At this time, I have the honor to present to you the moral leader of our nation. I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
Best way to get rid of yellow, crumbling toenails, Epsom salt foot soaks.
Of all the things, does that work? I don't know. I don't have those, but Epsom salt is good for shit. Do you like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Yeah, I mean, he's cool. He's not perfect, though. So anybody who wants to put him on a fucking pedestal is like, not perfect. You know, it's this motherfucker. But who is, right? Just like Mama said, only one. This motherfucker. Anyway, that's from 80s dating. But is he cool? Yeah, he's cool.
At this time, I have the honor to present to you the moral leader of our nation. I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we've come here today, traumatized with shameful conditions. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note, which every American was to fall after. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black as well as white men, would be guaranteed unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summit of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until that is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. That is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our body is heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied and will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution, staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities. Knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live about the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slaves will they be able to sit at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to stand up for freedom together. We will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
This happened August 28th, 1963 in Washington, D.C. Anything else you want to say about it? No, he's not perfect though. Really, nobody is. Depends how you define perfection, baby. I'm a potential 6 star, but his words still have not come to be accomplished, and it's sad. It's sad that he had to give his life for his beliefs. It's sad that there was never a true, honest investigation. It's sad that he had to die for that which he loved, where he wanted this country to be. And people don't care. It's a different country then. Arguably, the country hasn't changed in a lot of ways. And it's sad. Alright, are you done? Well, this is Kabbalah Crash Course, Coffee and Kabbalah. Day 20. Let's start getting these days right. 24, I want to say. 303 days till Grand Theft Auto allegedly comes out. Yeah, 24 days. And what are we learning today? Well, we had a big accomplishment yesterday. Let's read that motherfucking thing, because that's really important to me. That, look, I don't want anybody to die, but you've got to play by the rules. Hypothetically, a court could treat intermarriage as a capital offense by reasoning that it is a public treasonous violation of the covenant, and that God's approval of Pinchas's covenantal zeal shows that defending the covenant in this way is meritorious, so long as the human procedural safeguards, warning, witnesses, judicial authority are observed. I'm okay with that, and I'm sure some Robinson out there is going to be okay with that. Now, what about a situation where you have like a Romeo and a Juliet, and they can't get married? It'd be like, dog, you can convert. We will give you a pathway, and if you don't want it, we're going to warn you. There'll be witnesses or the judicial authority. We may even give you the option to leave, maybe. But if you continue, that just can't happen. It cannot happen. And Israel wants to know, well, why hasn't Mashiach come? And why is there still injustice in this world? Well, we've been ignoring this is a really big part of the Bible, and it's been ignored. And I don't know, maybe Talmud didn't get it right. But aren't you? You're against capital punishment, though. You're like, because there could always be evidence one way or another, whatever. Yeah, how do I want to deal with that? Well, you just do everything in your power to avoid it. Like, even if there's somebody out there, I'll talk to them. But look, I'm not the one who said it made God happy. And there are a lot of things that we do as Jews that don't make God happy. But this one specifically says, dude, Pinchas got all kinds of good. He was a priest during the Exodus, the grandson of Aaron and son of Eleazar, the high priest. Exodus 6:25. He distinguished himself as a youth at Shittim with his zeal against the heresy of Peor. Displeased with the immorality with the acts of Moabites and Midianites and successfully tempted the Israelites, Numbers 25 1 through 9. He tempted the Israelites, Numbers 25 1 through 9, to intermarry and to worship Baal Peor. Pinchas personally executed an Israelite man and a Midianite woman while they were together in the man's tent, running a javelin or spear through the man and the belly of the woman, bringing to an end the plague sent by Hashem to punish the Israelites for sexually intermingling with the Midianites. Pinchas is commended by Hashem in Numbers 25 10 through 13, as well as King David in Psalms 106, 28 through 31, for having stopped Israel's fall into idolatrous practices brought in by Midianite women, as well as for stopping the desecration of Hashem's sanctuary. After the entry to the land of Israel and the death of his father, he was appointed the third high priest of Israel and served at the sanctuary of Bethel. So this motherfucker was held up as like a baller as fuck. That's a big deal.
According to the Hebrew Bible, Phinehas, also spelled Phineas, F-E-S, Hebrew, Romanized, Pines, Ancient Greek, Phineas, Latin, Phineas, was a priest during the Exodus, the grandson of Aaron and son of Eleazar, the high priests. Exodus 6:25. He distinguished himself as a youth of Shittim with his zeal against the heresy of Peor. Displeased with the immorality with which the Moabites and Midianites had successfully tempted the Israelites, Numbers 25, 1-9, to intermarry and to worship Baal Peor, Phinehas personally executed an Israelite man and a Midianite woman while they were together in the man's tent, running a javelin or spear through the man and the belly of the woman, bringing to an end the plague sent by Yahweh to punish the Israelites for sexually intermingling with the Midianites. Phinehas is commended by Yahweh in Numbers 25 hours and 10 minutes 13, as well as King David in Psalms 106 hours and 28 minutes 31, for having stopped Israel's fall into idolatrous practices brought in by Midianite women, as well as for stopping the desecration of Yahweh's sanctuary. After the entry to the land of Israel and the death of his father, he was appointed the third high priest of Israel and served at the sanctuary of Bethel. Judges 20:28. Name. The name Phinehas probably comes from the Egyptian name Panetasi, PNSJ. According to the Oxford Companion to the Bible also uses Egyptian and Nubian names for the land and its people. For the Egyptians used to these color variations, the term for their southern neighbors was Netisi, southerner, which eventually also came to mean the black or the Nubian. This Egyptian root, NSJ, with the preformative P as a definite article, appears in Exodus 6.25 as the personal name of Aaron's grandson, Phinehas, equals Panes, dot. The theological word book of the Old Testament interprets the name to mean the bronze-colored one. Heresy of Peor. The account appears immediately after the story of Balaam, who had been hired by the Moabite Balaam to curse the Israelites. Balaam failed to do so, as Yahweh put words in his mouth of blessing for Israel. Instead, the first prayer said by Jews as part of their daily prayer service comes from this exact text. Having failed to curse them, Balaam left for his own country. The book of Numbers asserts a direct connection between Balaam and the events of Peor, stating that the Moabites caused the children of Israel, through the counsel of Balaam, to commit trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor. Moses gave orders to kill all the idolaters, yet Zimri, the son of the Israelite prince Salu from the tribe of Simeon, openly defied Moses and publicly showed his opinion to those standing at the tabernacle entrance with Moses by going into Cosbi, the daughter of the Midianite prince Sur. In a moment of great strength born of holy zeal, Phinehas went after them and ran them through with a spear. He thus stayed the plague that had broken out among the people, and by which 24,000 of them had already perished. Yahweh noticed that Phinehas showed loyalty and bravery for him. Yahweh decided not to destroy all of the children of Israel in anger because Phinehas had made atonement for their sins. Yahweh declared that Phinehas and his sons for all eternity would receive divine recognition for this, a covenant of peace and the covenant of an everlasting hereditary priesthood. The Christian book of Revelation mirrors this sentiment. Revelation describes Jesus as speaking to one of 7 Christian churches. Nevertheless, I have a few things against you. You have people there who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin by eating food sacrificed to idols and by committing sexual immorality. Giving a more elaborated version of events, the 1st century Romano-Jewish historian Flavius Josephus asserts that he and told them that, if they wished to bring evil upon Israel, they would have to make the Israelites sin. Balaam advised that they send the most beautiful women to seduce the Israelites to idolatry. This strategy succeeded, and soon many of the Israelites have been seduced. Later activities. Phinehas later led a 12,000-strong Israelite army against the Midianites to avenge this occasion. Among those slain in the expedition were 5 Midianite kings, Evi, Rechab, Sur, and Reba, and also Balaam, son of Beer. According to the Israelite roll calls, the Israelites did not lose a man in the expedition. Phinehas, son of Eleazar, appears again in the book of Joshua, when the tribes of Reuben and Gad, together with the half-tribe of Manasseh, depart to take possession of their lands beyond the Jordan. They build a great altar on the other side. The remainder of the Israelites mistake this for a separatist move to set up a new religious center, and send Phinehas to investigate. According to Joshua 24:33, Phinehas owned land in the mountains of Ephraim, where he buried other In addition to these episodes, Phinehas appears as the chief advisor in the war with the Benjamites. He is commemorated in Psalms 106 hours and 28 minutes 31. According to some rabbinical commentators, Phinehas sinned due to his revealing his certitude of Torah instruction to the masses at the time leading up to the Battle of Gibeah. In addition, he also failed to address the needs of relieving Jephthah of his to sacrifice his daughter. As consequence, the high priesthood was taken from him and temporarily given to the offspring of Ithamar, essentially Eli and his sons. According to 1 Chronicles 6:35-38, his relation to Zadok is the following. Phinehas begat Abishua, Abishua begat Bucky, Bucky begat Uzzi, Uzzi begat Zerahiah, Zerahiah begat Miriam, Miriam begat Amariah, Amariah begat Ahitub, and Ahitub begat Zadok. According to 1 Maccabees, he is an ancestor of Madadiyahu. Patrilineal ancestry. In Jewish culture, Pinchas is the name of the 41st weekly parashah or portion in the annual Jewish cycle of Torah reading in the 8th in the book of Numbers. The beginning of this parashah tells the judgment of Phinehas son of Eleazar. The end of the previous parashah tells of his zealous act. The Hebrew expression one who acts like Zimri and asks for a reward as if he were Phinehas refers to hypocrites who ask for undeserved rewards and honors. It's from the Babylonian Talmud, Sotah, ch. 22, page 2, where it is attributed to the Hasmonean king Alexander Jannaeus. See Hebrew Wikipedia. In some traditions, for example in the Targum Pseudo-Jonathan, Phinehas is identified with Elijah. This identification apparently arose during the 1st century AD. Veneration. The Roman Catholic Church commemorates him as a saint on July 1st and March 1st. The Eastern Orthodox Church commemorates him as a saint on March 12th, March 20th on the new calendar. According to Marianne Ballers, the story of Phinehas is a great favorite among identity believers, a biblical example of race mixing. The story has inspired a self-selected, leaderless cult within identity called the Phineas priesthood. Its members consider themselves vigilantes for Christ.
Well, I don't know about any of that shit, but do you agree with what he did? No. I think that there should have been a based in if that could have been arranged, or there should have been some kind of judgment. But under the circumstance, it pleased God. I mean, I'm not one to say that what God should want and what God shouldn't want. I'm just saying Pinchas could be, we could be a descendant of Pinchas. You never know. You could be. All right, Pinchas, are you done? Oh, fuck. Shit sucks. Jewish Kabbalists. This app is amazing. All right, what are we learning today? Seti Ashkenaz, Samuel Spire, Judah Ben Shmuel of Regensburg, Eliezer Worms. It's a motherfucker with the peanuts. Medieval emergence and development of Kabbalah, 12th to 15th centuries. Province Circle, Province and Languac, Sages of Province. Anything else you want to say about Martin Luther? Well, if Martin Luther King Jr. was here right now, what would you say? I would do my best to like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and because that's always had questionableness at Boston University, some other shit, and your detractors take that away from you. I think I'd call you that. What else would you say, Doug? There's a painting of you I've seen that looks a lot like Barack Obama, and I wasn't really on a date. It was a weird thing with this chick, allegedly, perhaps, and we were looking at it, and she thought it looked like Barack Obama too, but it's supposed to be you. Anyway, what else would you say to him? Do you think he'd like college football? Yeah, I think he'd be a big SEC fan. Big time. Anything else? He probably did like college football to some extent. But he probably had his mind on other shit too. Let's look it up. He's not, but he was a known sports fan who appreciated the culture and social significance of athletics. According to his son, he used to follow football and was even a basketball and baseball player during his youth. He played football as a teenager. What do you mean he wasn't a football fan? I mean, he played it. He played football as a teenager at Booker T. Washington High School, where he was at the quarterback, and later played football at Morehouse College as a freshman. Dude, he played football in college. You don't think he's a fucking football fan? Where, while there is no direct evidence he followed college football professionally, I mean, can you even do that? I guess. His engagement in sports, especially their role in promoting unity and progress, was well documented. The NFL continues to honor his legacy, including displaying the message "Choose love" in end zones during games, reflecting the values he's championed. All right. So you think he was a college football fan? Yeah, to some extent.
Actually, Provence, Hebrew, lit, sages of Provence, refers to the Hekanim, sages or rabbis, of Provence, now Occitania in France, which was a great center for rabbinical Jewish scholarship in the times of the Tosophists. The singular form is Hakam, Article actually proven out term for rabbi. In matters of halakha, as well as in their traditions and customs, the proven El Hekanim occupy an intermediate position between the Sephardic Judaism of the neighboring Spanish scholars and the Old French, similar to the New Sachas, tradition represented by the Tosophists. In matters of halakha, as well as in their traditions and customs, the proven El Hekanim occupy an intermediate position between the Sephardic Judaism of the neighboring Spanish scholars and the Old French, similar to the New Ashkenaz, tradition represented by the Tosophists. The Provence in Jewish tradition is not limited to today's administrative region of Provence but to the entirety of Occitania. This includes Narbonne, which is sometimes informally, though incorrectly, transliterated as Narbonne as a result of the back and forth transliteration between Rabbinical Hebrew and Old Occitan, Luma, which is informally transliterated Luma, and the city of Montpellier, 7 kilometers, 4.3 mi, from the Mediterranean coast. It also included cities which at that time formed part of the Catalonia's political and cultural domain, such as Perpignan. In some ways, the Jewish traditions of Catalonia were closer to those of Provence than to those of the Kingdom of Castile and Al-Andalus. There was a distinctive proven out liturgy used by the Jews of the papal enclave of Conche-Venaison, known as Papal Jews, who remained following the expulsion of the Jews from the rest of France. After the French Revolution, when France annexed Conche-Venaison, the proven rite was replaced by the Portuguese Sephardic liturgy, which is used by the Jews of Carpentras today. Partial list. Narbonne. Lille. Montpellier. Rest of Provence. Members of the Colonimus family. References.
Yeah, it's cool. I wanted to sing happy birthday to Martin Luther King. Is it his birthday? I thought like I thought it was January 19th, January 15th. He was born on January 15th, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. Today's January 19th. Okay. Cool. Is that the end of your story? No. We'll sing. We'll try it. Does it have more lyrics than just happy birthday? Because if it doesn't, I can do the other part. All right, this is going to be hard because I normally only hear the refrain. So this is going to be in the Kabbalah thing? Yeah, dog. Damn, this is a long ass song. Stevie could have just gotten into it, dog. But that's cool. You know, it didn't make much sense. There ought to be a law against Anyone who takes offense at a day, in our celebration. I remember the part. Running into my mind. There ought to be a time that you can decide to show you how much we love you. We'd agree if you couldn't take it. If you have a birthday, if you cake and it could be happy birthday. Okay, you can do this. It doesn't make much sense. There ought to be a law against anyone takes offense at a day in your celebration, cause we all know in our minds that there ought to be a time that we can set aside to show just how much we love you, and I'm sure you would agree. You could live with my family, that we have a perfect party. But the day you came to be, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. That was tight. You wanted to talk about hoes. Yeah, are you going to? Um, I don't want to do a 2 or 3 hour video today. I did that yesterday. And I'd like to get this one at an hour. If I taught Kabbalah or whatever this is for an hour every day for the rest of my life, that'd be a wild accomplishment. That'd be better than anything in Judaism ever. Really? Yeah. And just never understood how a man who died for good could not have the day that would be sad for his recognition, because it should never be just because some cannot see a dream as clear as he, that yea make an illusion, and we all know everything that he should be able to bring. One piece and I still sing, thanks to Martin Luther King. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. I have together in a holiday where peace is celebrated all throughout the world. What can I do for people like me and you? who know the way of truth. Now, if this doesn't fucking upload correctly, Zuckerberg, you're letting down Stevie Wonder, Martin Luther King, you're letting down everybody because your shit sucks. Is love, community to all God's children. It would be a great event. And the whole day should be spent in full remembrance of those who lived and died for the goodness of our people. So let us all begin. Remember to win. Let it out, don't hold the wind. Sing it loud as you can. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday, happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday, ooh yeah, happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Unity is a dream that so long ago died in the hearts of all people that live in unity. We'll make the dream become reality. No, we will. Because the heart's total. Birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Well, that was tight. All right, are we done? No, but I want. What is Martin Luther King have to do with Kabbalah? Unity, peace. Those are Kabbalistic ideas. All right. Next up, Languedoc Roussillon. No one knows what this is.
Languedoc Roussillon, French pronunciation, Occitan, Catalan, Languedoc-Roussel, is a form of France. On January 1st, 2016, it joined with the region of Midi-Pyrenees to become Occitania. It comprised 5 departments, and bordered the French regions of Provence-Alpes d'Azur, Auvergne, Midi-Pyrenees towards the north, and Spain, Andorra and the Mediterranean Sea towards the south. It was the northernmost region of mainland France. Toponymy. The first part of the name of the province of Languedoc-Roussillon comes from the French language of and is also a historical region. Southern France. The word for yes was the Occitan language Languedoc. 14th century. The central area of France was referred to as Languedoc. There the word for yes was oil in Old French, later becoming wheat. These old place names referred to areas where Occitan and Old French were spoken. The Edict of Villers-Cotterets made French the official national language in 1539. Roussillon was the name of the medieval county of Roussillon. History. Towards the end of the 3rd century BC, a Celtic people, the Valki, took up residence in the region between the Auvergne and the Garonne, from the Cevennes to the Pyrenees. Their capitals were Toulouse and Metz. They made a pact with the Romans from the 1st century BC. Narbonne was created to pacify the province in 118 BC and became the capital of the Narbonnese. At the beginning of the 5th century, the Vandals invaded the province and then the Visigoths settled there. The Narbonne region, like the Iberian Peninsula, remained Visigothic until its conquest by the Norse between 719, fall of Narbonne, and 725, fall of Carcassonne and then Metz. Narbonne then became the capital one of the 5 provinces of Al-Andalus led by Wali for nearly 40 years. The region was conquered by Pepin the Short, fall of Narbonne in 759, who made it the Marquisate of Gothia, included in the Kingdom of Aquitaine created in 778. This vast territory encompassed all of the south of the Auvergne to the Atlantic and was bequeathed by Charlemagne to his son Louis the Pious in 781. The administration was entrusted to the Counts of Toulouse. During the feudal era, a great political fragmentation took place. The counties of Roussillon and Cerdagne passed into the orbit of the crown, while Bas Languedoc passed under the domination of the House of their rivals, the Counts of Toulouse. Read IV 1042-1115, achieved through marriage the objective of reunification by enlarging his state to the county of Rouergue, and Metz, Bon, Givaudan, Ag, Béziers and Uzès. The fight of Catharism and the Albigensian Crusade led to the extinction of the dynasty of the Counts of Toulouse. The province was united to the Kingdom of France in 1271, with the exception of Montpellier, which remained under influence of the House of Barcelona and then of Majorca, and which was not attached to the Kingdom of France until 1149. From there was born the Royal Languedoc, which persisted until the French The Treaty of Corbeil in 1258 ratified the division with the southern territories of the region. The Corbeil formed border between the Kingdom of France and the Principality of Catalonia and the Crown of Aragon. In 1659, the Treaty of the Pyrenees led to the annexation of Roussillon, northern Cerdagne, to the Kingdom of France. Population. The region is experiencing the strongest demographic growth in France, and could have around 3,300,000 inhabitants by 2030, an increase of 36% compared to 2000. This increase is mainly due to internal migration, natural increase being rather low. Pyrenees Orientales has the largest proportion of elderly people, 12.10% over 75. Gard and H-Wald are the youngest department.
We don't need to learn about all this shit. Alright, so it's just some area of France. Who gives a fuck?
Writings. Impact. Like most of the proven L scholars, Rabbi was a diligent. Biography. Contents. Abraham ben Isaac of Narbonne, Hebrew, c. 1085-1158, was a proven L rabbi, also known as Rabbi, and author of the halakhic work HaEshkal, the cluster. Biography. His teacher was Moses ben Joseph ben Reuben Levi, during whose lifetime Abraham was appointed president, at Beth Din, of the 9-member rabbinical board of Narbonne, and was made principal of the rabbinical academy. Talmudists he taught there included Abraham ben David III, who afterward became his son-in-law, and Zeradiah ha-Levi. Abraham ben Isaac died at Narbonne in 1158. Writings. Like most of the proven L scholars, Rabbi was a diligent author, composing numerous commentaries upon the Talmud, all of which, however, have been lost with the addition of that upon the treatise Baba Batra, of which a manuscript has been preserved in Munich. Numerous quotations from these commentaries are to be found in the writings of Zeradiah Gerondi, Namanides, Nassim Gerondi, and others. Many of his explanations of Talmudical passages are also repeated in his responsa, which give his method of treatment. In Abraham's comments on the Talmud he seems to have taken Rashi's own, for they are marked by the same precision and clearness of exposition. An idea of his Talmudic knowledge may be gathered from his book HaEshkal. Benjamin Hirsch Auerbach published in 1867 edition of the Eshkal in 3 volumes with commentary, which is now known to be a forgery. Most scholars assume it is an intentional forgery by Auerbach on English Ebonister page 144 and 203. However, Auerbach's edition is known to contain a wide variety of much later material. Shalom and Hanoch Albeck published a separate edition from genuine manuscripts in 1935-1938. Albeck writes that the book is, in practice, mostly a redaction of the Sefer HaEdim of Judah ben Barzilai. In 1985, the 4th volume of Auerbach's edition was published by Bernard Bergman, who had defended Auerbach's edition in a 1974 essay that makes clear that he did not then have access to any manuscript of either the Eshkal or Auerbach's commentary thereon. The 4th volume cites a book which had not yet been published at the time of Auerbach's death. Bergman, who was convicted of Medicaid fraud in 1976, never explained where he obtained the material for this 4th volume. His depth and acumen, found to much better advantage in his responsa, quoted in the Kotem and in the Sefer HaTerumin of Samuel Sarti. Other responses sent to Joseph ben N. Graziano of Barcelona and Meshulam ben Jacob of Lumel are found in a manuscript belonging to Baron de Ginsburg in St. Petersburg. A collection of Ravatu's responsa preserved in Yemen, the only manuscript of its kind, was published by R. Yosef Kafi in 1962. As an acknowledged rabbinical authority and president of the rabbinical board, he was frequently called upon to give his decision on difficult questions, and his answers show that he was not only a lucid exegete, but also a logical thinker. Impact. Though he lacked originality, Abraham's influence upon Talmudical study in Provence ought not to be rated. Languedoc formed political a connecting link between Spain and northern France. In like manner, Jewish scholars played the role of intermediaries between the Jews of these countries. Abraham ben Isaac represented this function. He was the intermediary between the dialectics employed by the Tosophists of France and the Semitic science of the Spanish rabbis. The French-Italian codifiers Aaron Hacohen of Lou, Zedekiah ben Abraham, and many others took Abraham's Hadashkal for their model, and it until the appearance of the term by Jacob ben Asher. That Hadashkal lost its importance and sank into comparative oblivion. The school founded by Abraham and Isaac, as exemplified in Rabbi 3 and Zerahia HaLevi, was nevertheless the creator of the system of Talmudic criticism, and the method it employed was the Tosophist dialectic modified and simplified by Spanish Jewish logic.
Rabbi says, Arninos goes, so it's a question over here, right? So Rabbi says that Arninos extends up until the time of burial. So what about the following case?
Biography. Rabbi's maternal grandfather, Rabbi Yitzhak Abraham ben David, c. 1125 November 27, 1198, also known by the abbreviation Rabbi, for Rabbi Abraham ben David, Rabbi or Rabbi 3, was a proven an important commentator on the Talmud, Sefer Halachot of Isaac Alfasi, and Mishneh Torah of Maimonides, and is regarded as the father of Kabbalah and one of the key links in the chain of Jewish mystics. Biography. Rabbi's maternal grandfather, Rabbi Yitzhak b. Yaakov ibn Baruch ben Rita, 1035-1094, who had compiled astronomical tables for the son of Shemuel HaNagid, was one of 5 rabbis in Spain renowned for their learning. Concerning the oral history of his maternal grandfather's family and how they came to Spain, the rabbit wrote, when Titus prevailed over Jerusalem, his officer who was appointed over his Dana of these captives made up of the nobles of Jerusalem, and so he sent a few of them to him, and there were amongst them those who made curtains and who were knowledgeable in the work of silk, and whose name was Baruch, and they remained in Amrita. Rabbit was born in Provence, France, and died at Pasquires. He was the son-in-law of Abraham ben Isaac of Narbonne at Bethdin, known as the Rabbit too. He was the father of Ar Isaac the Blind, and Neoplatonist, important Jewish mystical thinker. The teachers under whose guidance he acquired much of his Talmudic learning were Ar Moses ben Joseph and Ar Meshulam ben Jacob of Lumel. Rabbit remained in Lumel after completing his studies, and subsequently became one of the city's rabbinical authorities. He went to Montpellier, where he remained for a short time, and then moved to Ennes, where he lived for a considerable period. Ar Moses ben Judah refers to the rabbinical school of Ennes, then under Rabbit's direction, as the chief seat of Talmudic learning in Provence. The center of the Rabbit's activity was Pasquires, after which place he is often called the type. It is difficult to determine when he moved to Pasquires, but about 1165, Benjamin of Tudela, at the outset of his travels, called upon him there. He spoke of the Rabbit's wealth and benevolence, not only to erect and repair a large school building, but he also cared for the material welfare of the poor students. A street exists in Beaufort with the name dedicated after him on the 800th anniversary of his death. His great wealth brought him into peril of his life because, to obtain some of it, Elzar, the lord of Pasquires, had him cast into prison, where, like Rabbi Meir of Rothenburg, he might have died, had not Count Roger II Trencavel, who was friendly to the Jews, intervened, and by his sovereignty banished the lord of Pasquires to Carcassonne. Thereupon he returned to Pasquires, where he remained until his death. Among the many learned Talmudists who were his disciples in Pasquires were Rabbis Isaac HaCohen of Narbonne, the first commentator upon the Jerusalem Talmud, Abraham ben Nathan of Lumel, author of Talmud, Meir ben Isaac of Carcassonne, author of Sefer HaEzer, and Asher ben Meshulam of Lumel, author of several rabbinical works. Rabbit's influence on Jonathan of Lumel is also evident, though the latter did not attend his lectures. Literary works. Rabbit was a prolific author. He not only wrote answers to 100 learned questions, to which responses are still partially preserved in the collections Temim Diaim, Or Hayim, and Shibali Halakha, but he also wrote a commentary on the whole Talmud and compiled several compendiums of Halakha. In 1991, Rabbi Yosef Kafik published a compendium of his responsa which he gleaned from various sources, 42 of which derived from handwritten manuscripts in his possession. Most of his works are lost, but some survive, such as the Sefer Bali HaNefesh, the Book of the Conscientious, a treatise on the laws relating to women, published in 1602, and his commentary on Torah of Kohanim, published in 1862 at Vienna. While Rashi's commentary furnished a well-paved road to the Talmud, Rabbit, by his acute criticism, pointed out the way intelligibly and with discrimination. This critical tendency is characteristic of all of Rabbit's writings. Thus, in his commentary upon Torah of Kohanim, pages 41a, 71b, he made the caustic observation that many obscure passages in rabbinical literature owe their obscurity to the fact that occasional explanatory or marginal notes not tending to elucidate the text have been incorporated. The title of Baal Hazakum, critic, given to Rabbit frequently by the rabbis, showed that they viewed the direction in which his ability lay. Indeed, critical annotations display his powers at their best, and justify his being with the Rif, Rashi, and Maimonides. The tone he employed is also characteristic of his attitude toward the persons under criticism. He treated the Rif with the utmost respect, almost with humility, and referred to him as the son by whose brilliant razor eyes are dazzled. His language toward Zerachia HaLevi of Jeroma, Baal Hammer, was harsh, almost hostile. Though only 18 years old, Zerachia possessed the courage and the ability to write a sharp criticism of the Rif, and Rabbit referred to him as an immature youth who dared to criticize his teacher. According to Louis Ginsburg, Tacitus are notable for having prevented the replacement of the Talmud study with the exclusive study of the codes of Isaac Alfasi and Maimonides, while Jews in Muslim countries had a wide variety of serious intellectual outlets besides the Talmud, such as the sciences, philosophy, literature, and the Hebrew language. Ginsburg asserted that Ashkenazi Jews have such outlets apart for Talmud study. Without the intricacies of the study of the Talmud and its commentaries, Ashkenazi Jews would have been left with no serious intellectual outlets. Hasagut to Mishneh Torah. Rabbit's criticism of Maimonides' code of Jewish law, Mishneh Torah, was very harsh. This was not due to any personal ill feeling, but rather a result of the radical differences of view in matters of faith between two of the greatest Talmudists of the 12th century. Maimonides aimed to bring order to the vast labyrinth of Halakha by presenting final results in a definite, systematic and methodical manner, but to Rabbit, this very aim was the main defect of the work, a legal code that did not state the sources and authorities from which its decisions were derived, and offered no proof of the correctness of its statements. Was, in Rabbit's opinion, entirely unreliable rulings, for which purpose Maimonides had specifically designed it. Such a code, Rabbit thought, could be justified only if written by a man claiming infallibility, by one who could demand that his assertions be accepted without question. If Maimonides had intended to stem the further development of Talmud study by reducing it to the form of a code, Rabbit felt it his duty to oppose such an attempt, as contrary to the free spirit of rabbinical Judaism, which refuses to surrender blindly to authority. Ravid was thus an opponent to the codification of the halakha, but he was even more strongly opposed to the construction of a system of dogmas in Judaism, particularly according to the method followed by Maimonides, who often set up the concepts of the Aristotelian philosophy as Jewish theology. For example, Maimonides, in accordance with his philosophical conviction, declared God's incorporeality to be a principle of faith, or, as he formulates it, whosoever conceives God to be a corporeal being is an apostate. In Ravid circles, a certain mystical anthropomorphistic conception of deity was common, and naturally Ravid resented a statement which practically declared his friends to be apostates. He, therefore, appended to Maimonides' formula this brief but emphatic criticism. Why does he call such persons apostates? Men, better and worthier than he, have held this view, for which they believe they have found authority in the scriptures and in a confusing the Agadah. While the phrase concerning the Agadah shows that Ravid himself was not a corporealist, he nevertheless opposed Maimonides elevating incorporeality into a dogma. When Ravid conversely found Maimonides' opinions on the world to come and the eternity of the world to be heretical, he has no word of vituperation from Maimonides, but merely contented himself with recording his difference of opinion. Thus, the ultra-conservative Talmudist showed himself to be more theologically tolerant than the greatest of the medieval Jewish philosophers. Ravid was similarly severe on what he saw as Maimonides' attempts to smuggle in his philosophic theater cover of Talmudic passage opinions on the definition of forbidden divination differ widely, perhaps because it was impractical to view every superstitious practice, many common among Jews at the time, as forbidden. Maimonides, who, from the point of view of his philosophy, viewed divination as a pure absurdity, ruled that even the innocent actions of Eliezer, Gen 24:14, and Jonathan, 1 Sam 14, 8:10, were forbidden divination. Here Ravid was not content with ruling Eliezer's and Jonathan's actions to have been permitted, but he declared that Maimonides deserved to be stricken with the pulsatine mura, similar to a junior rabbi who had misrepresented the opinion of Levi ben Sissi. Such philosophical differences suffice to explain the intensity of Ravid's opposition to Maimonides, and particularly to Mishneh Torah, a work which Ravid himself describes as a great achievement. Abraham Zacuta recorded an anecdote whereby he claims that Rambam, during his lifetime, eventually conceded to the correctness of his disputant, the Rebbe, saying of him, "In all my life, no one has ever beaten me, except a certain artisan, Kabbalist and philosopher." Abraham Zacuta recorded an anecdote whereby he claims that Rambam, during his lifetime, eventually conceded to the correctness of his disputant, the Rebbe, saying of him, "In all my life, no one has ever beaten me, except a certain artisan, Kabbalist and philosopher." Many Kabbalists view the Rebbe as one of the fathers of their system, and this is true to the extent that he was inclined to mysticism, which led him to follow an ascetic mode of life and gained for him the title of the pious. He wrote that the Holy Spirit has appeared in our Beit Midrash and taught them specific halakhic rulings, and attributed rulings to the Lord's counsel to those who feared him. A commentary to Sefer Yetzirah was once attributed to him, but has been shown instead to be the work of Yosef ben Shalom Ashkenazi. The Rebbe is widely considered to be the source of the commonly used diagram of the Sefer of the Tree of Life that was ultimately written down by his son Isaac the Blind. The Rebbe was not an enemy of science, as many deem him. His works show that he was a close student of Hebrew philology, and the fact that he encouraged the translation of Arbahayot and Takudas Chavat HaLevavot shows that he was not hostile to philosophy. This philosophic work argues strongly against the anthropomorphic conception of the deity, and the favor with which Ravid looked upon it is sufficient grounds to acquit him of the charge of having held anthropomorphic views. Some of his works show acquaintance with philosophy. For instance, his remark on Hilchot Teshuvah, 5, is a literal quotation from Honim ben Isaac's Mazar HaPhilim, pages 11, 12, or Lowenthal, page 39, which is extant only in nation. Descendants. The Ravid had many descendants, who today could carry the family name Ravid, Ravid, and Ravid. Family records indicate they made their way to Spain. They appeared in Toledo and Barcelona and were reputedly advisors in the court of Ferdinand and Isabella. After the expulsion, they were exiled to Italy, from whence they made their way to northern, and later to eastern, Europe, where they served as rabbis in Tel Ai, Lithuania, and teachers in its Tel Shishiva. Before the First World War, they emigrated to countries throughout the world, and today they live on every inhabited continent. Dr. David Raphael, author of the Alhambra Decree and director of the musical documentary Song of the Sephardi, is a descendant of the Ravid by Crespin Astrud. Ha Levi, 14th century.
So this is a guy who came up with the Tree of Life, maybe, but his son Isaac the Blind wrote it, which is kind of hilarious because that guy's blind, allegedly. Who knows?
Isaac the Blind, Hebrew, Rabbi Aksag NHR, literally Rabbi Isaac, of much light, c. 1160-1235 in Provence, France, was a French rabbi and a famous writer on Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. The Aramaic epithet Sagi never means of much light in the sense of having excellent eyesight, an ironic euphemism for being blind. Some historians suspect him to be the author of the Book of the Bahir. Wait,
the Aramaic epithet Sagi never means of much light in the sense of having excellent eyesight, an ironic euphemism for being blind. Oh, so he had really good eyesight.
Isaac was the son of the...
Why wouldn't they just say like eagle eye Isaac?
Isaac was the son
No,
of the...
because that's not what they did, dog.
Isaac the Blind, Hebrew, Rabbi Aksag NHR, literally Rabbi Isaac, of much light, c. 1160-1235 in Provence, France, was a French rabbi and a famous writer on Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. The Aramaic epithet Sagi never means of much light in the sense of having excellent eyesight, an ironic euphemism for being blind. Some historians suspect him to be the author of the Book of the Bahir, an important early text of Kabbalah. Others, especially Gershom's column, see his Origins of the Kabbalah, page 253, characterize this view as an erroneous and totally unfounded hypothesis. Isaac was the son of the famous Talmudist Abraham ben David of Pasquires, Ravid. The Bahir first appeared in the Middle Ages, around 1200 CE in France. It discusses a number of ideas that became important for Kabbalah, and even though the origins of the anonymous work are obscure, there were important Kabbalists who were writing at the same time in France. The most influential of these was Isaac the Blind. Isaac the Blind's mystical concepts. Isaac considered the Sephirot as having their origins in a hidden and infinite level deep within the Ein Sof, or divine being, lit, that without end. He believed that from the Ein Sof emanated Machshava, divine thought, which was the first supernatural quality. The rest of the Sephirot emanated from the divine thought. Individual beings in the world are material manifestation of the Sephirot, albeit on a lower level of reality. Mystic experience aids in reascending the levels of emanations to unite with divine thought. The most famous student of Isaac was Ariel of Gerona.
That's it? Alright, is that the end of your story? So these guys were southern France. All right, that's cool. War with this bitch again. Yo, in certain rabbinical circles within Judaism and in Israel, as many as 40% of all people who claim to be Jewish, not Jewish halakhically. And there's a minority opinion that considers a zona to be any woman who has relations with a non halakhically Jewish man. And that means that the odds are if women, let's say, have 5 to 10 partners, maybe 90% of women do before marriage, maybe fewer, maybe more, but on average, then a lot of women within Judaism are zona if you take this minority opinion. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're trying to do here. You're stress testing a very strict minority halakhic opinion by pushing it to the sociological implications. That's a legitimate theoretical exercise, but it's important to be precise about what actually exists in Torah halakha versus what is constructed extrapolation. Let me break this down cleanly and calmly. Mainstream halakhic definition of zona. Mainstream halakha, Tanakh, Talmud, Rambam, Shulchan Aruch. A zona is not a woman who had premarital sex. No, we know that. A woman who had multiple partners. We know that. A woman who slept with a non-Jew as such. A zona is core categories. A woman who had relations with a man she is biblically forbidden to marry in a sexual prohibition sense. Ariot. Or, according to some, with someone whose union produces a severe genealogical disqualification, for instance, mamzerot context, or in limited cases involving prostitution linked to idolatry, biblical usage. This is why Rambam explicitly rules relations with a non-Jew do not make a woman a zona. Ishrei Bia 18, 1-3. The position is overwhelmingly accepted in Halakha. The minority extreme view you're referencing. You are correct that a small minority view exists, mostly marginal opinions, isolated Tosaphist strands, some later polemical or mystical rhetoric. The minority argument claims any man of Jewish woman cannot marry with relations equal to zona. This view does exist, but is not codified, is rejected by Rambam, Rif, Rosh, Shulchan, is treated as Darat Yachid, isolated opinion. Importantly, even those who float this idea do not operationalize it sociologically, where the problem argument breaks. This is the key point where reasoning overreaches halakhically, even on its own terms. Problem with the 90% claim. Even if one adopted the extreme minority definition, halakha does not reason statistically. Status is individual and evidentiary. Probability does not equal legal certainty. Sophic does not status. Maybe one was X does not. No witnesses, no certainty, no legal designation. Most authorities using this view still require a clear knowledge of a partner's status, intentional violation, often idolatrous context. So you cannot say most women would therefore be zona. Even the minority position does not function that way legally. My halakha refuses to apply that logic. Here's the deep structural reason. If you define zona as that broadly, you invalidate huge portions of Kiel Yisrael. You destabilize marriage, kahuna, lineage. I've already done that. You contradict explicit Talmudic safeguards against mass disqualification. Chazal are extremely resilient to definitions that retroactively destroy people's status, rely on sociological assumptions, turn private behavior into irreversible stigma. That's why better be lenient and preserve Israel than strict and erase it. It is a recurring halakhic principle. Bottom line clarity: your statement is accurate only if in this very narrow sense. If one adopts an extreme non-codified minority opinion and ignores evidentiary standards and applies sociological probability as legal fact, then one could theoretically argue that many women would fall under this label. But that is not halakha. Well, it's minority. That is not how even minority views are applied. I don't know about that. That is not how Jewish law functions, and that has never been accepted in practice. One sentence sermon, clean and honest. While a fringe minority opinion has argued that relations with a non-Jew could render a woman a zona halakha, both mainstream and minority rejects probabilistic reasoning and mass application, making claims that most women would be zona legally and methodologically invalid. If you want, we can look. It's pretty simple. If a woman cannot marry a man and she has relations with that person, logically, it follows that that is prohibited and she's a zona. If she's not a zona, then we have to create a new category for women who have these types of relations, and that category doesn't exist. I understand a lot of intuition you're pushing, but the key point is this halakha is not built on pure syllogistic logic. Can't marry, no sex equals zona. It's built on defined legal categories, and that's where your argument breaks, not morally, but jurisprudently. Let me explain this cleanly and directly. Your logical claim, stated fairly, your claim is if a woman cannot marry a man and she has relations with him, then that act must place her in an existing halakhic category. If it doesn't, the system is incoherent. That's absolutely right. That's a reasonable philosophical instinct. But halakha explicitly rejects that inference. Why cannot marry does not equal zona in halakha. Halakha already distinguishes between different kinds of cannot marry, and only one subset creates zona status. There are three separate categories: ariot, sexual prohibitions. These are relationships where the act itself is forbidden by Torah: incest, adultery, male homosexual intercourse, bestiality. Only these create zona status, according to mainstream halakha. Marriage prohibitions, Isser Chitin. Hold on. That's a big one. Marriage prohibitions, Ishu Chitin. These are relationships where the marriage is forbidden, the sexual act is sinful, but not ariot. Examples: non-Jew, mamzer for most women, certain Cohen restrictions. These do not create zona status. This is not a loophole, it is an intentional structural distinction. Communal covenantal prohibitions. These include threats to identity, assimilation, national continuity. These are handled via prohibition sanctions, social boundaries, not sexual status reclassifications. So what is the category then? You said if she's not a zona, then we must create a new category. Halakha already has it. The category is simply a woman who violated a prohibition but does not acquire a permanent sexual status defect. Halakha does this all the time. We'll give it a fucking name. A Jew who eats pork is a sinner, not to logically change. A woman who violates Nida is a sin, not zona. A man who violates Shabbat, it's a severe sin, not reclassified. Halakha does not assume every serious sin must permanently redefine a person's identity. That assumption is Greek logic, not rabbinic law. Why halakha refuses to create your proposed category? Because doing so would turn sins into irreversible caste changes, destroy teshuva as a legal reality, retroactively invalidate marriages, collapse communal stability, contradict explicit Talmudic readings. This is why Chazal were ruthless about limiting who becomes mamzer zona halala. They knew exactly where your logic leads. Rambam states this explicitly, no ambiguity. Rambam Israel Bia 8. Not every forbidden act renders a woman a zona. Only those relations the Torah explicitly defined as such. This is not evasive. This is deliberate legal containment. The real philosophical disagreement, naming it plain. Your position assumes law should mirror moral intuition. Covenant violation should reclassify identity. Halakha assumes law must preserve continuity, repairability, and restraint. Identity destruction is reserved for explicitly stated cases only. That's a clash. One sentence, bottom line. Halakha explicitly rejects the idea that cannot marry logically implies zona because Jewish law permits permanent sexual status categories for narrower defined ariot and intentionally shows other serious violations to remain sins without identity reclassification. From a Kabbalistic standpoint, if a woman is having relations with someone who is not halakhically Jewish, then that person does not have a Jewish soul. There's an argument to be made that that person is a beast, which would be Ario, and then she would be a Zona. I need to be very clear and careful because the way you frame this crosses from textual analysis into a claim that dehumanizes an entire group, and Judaism explicitly rejects that conclusion, including Kabbalah. I can't explain why someone might try to make that argument, and more importantly, why it fails decisively, even on Kabbalistic grounds. Why Kabbalah actually says about itself precisely. Classic Kabbalah, Zohar, Arizal, Ramchal teaches Jews possess neshama rooted in the covenant, non-Jews possess a fully human soul, often described as nefesh shecheli, rational soul, rooted differently, not covered. Crucially, different spiritual role does not equal lesser being, does not equal animal. Non-Jews are never halakhically or ontologically classified as animals. Why the beast claim is not valid in Judaism. Even texts that use harsh metaphors, for instance, animal soul, are speaking about spiritual function, covenantal obligation, metaphysical role. They are not redefining species. Judaism is explicit. All humans are created, but B'Tselem, Elohim, in God's image. Yeah. Bestiality only to non-human animals. No halakhic source reclassifies any human as an animal. If that were true, killing non-Jews would not be murder. It is. Stealing from non-Jews would not be theft. It is. Courts would treat non-Jews as property. They never do. So this argument collapses instantly under halakhic scrutiny. Why Kabbalah cannot override halakha here? Even if one were to push mystical language aggressively, Kabbalah has zero authority to redefine humanity, create new sexual prohibitions, invent capital crimes. The Arizal himself insists Kabbalah explains reality. It does not legislate law. No Kabbalist ever ruled sex with a non-Jew equals bestiality. Non-Jews equals halakhic animals. Zona status derives from non-Jewish soul. Those claims do not exist in normative or even fringe Jewish law. Why the argument is categorically rejected by Chazal. Chazal were aware of mystical distinctions and let them affect legal status because it would invalidate huge numbers of Jews. It would abolish teshuva. It would collapse marriage law. It would permit violence. It would contradict Zelem Elohim. That's why Zona is narrowly defined. Bestiality is biologically constrained. Kabbalah is from criminal law. This is not oversight. It is intentional containment. Where the intuition does belong, reframed safely. What can be said, even in mystical languages, intermarriage is spiritually damaging. It disrupts covenantal flow. It creates serious metaphysical consequences. But Judaism handles this through prohibition, education, boundaries, communal norms, not through dehumanization or capital reclassification. One sentence conclusion, very important. Even with Kabbalah, non-Jews are fully human beings created in the divine image, and no strand of Jewish law or mysticism permits classifying relations with them as bestiality or using mystical soul language to redefine zona status or justify capital punishment. Okay, back to being zonas. One of the reasons why Chazal is hesitant to redefine zona status into the minority opinion because it would have a breakdown with the marriage structure and Kohanim and all that other stuff. That's cool. And I understand the need to want to preserve things for that reason. But if we go to the text, it says that a zona is someone with whom a woman has relations and she cannot marry. So I think that the Chazal were arguing in favor of the safer route, but from a strict view on this, any woman who has relations with a non-Jew is Zona because she can't marry that person. I understand what you're saying, and you're right about where the pressure point is, but the issue I understand what you're saying, and I want to respond cleanly, textually, and respectfully because this is now a hermeneutics question, not a moral one. Your claim is if the Torah defines a zona as a woman who has relations with someone she cannot marry, then any relations with a non-Jew should render her a zona. Chazal later limited this definition for social and structural reasons. This is a coherent, strict reading claim. The issue is that the premise about the Torah's definition is not actually correct once you read the text carefully. What the Torah actually says and does not say. The Torah never defines a zona as any woman who has relations with someone she cannot marry. That sentence does not appear anywhere in Tanakh. Instead, the Torah uses zona in two ways: contextual and narrative usage. There shall not be a zona among the daughters of Israel, and used descriptively, not definitionally. Legal usage via chazal. The Torah never gives a legal definition of zona on its own. The definition is supplied by oral law, not narrowed later. So chazal are not guiling or softening a broader definition. They are supplying the definition in the first place. Where the cannot marry idea actually comes from, you're intuitively drawing the Darashic principle, not a verse. Zona equals relations with a man forbidden to her. But in the Talmud, Yevamot 61b, Kedushin 77a, that phrase is explicitly limited to Ishrei Ariot, sexual prohibitions where the act itself is inherently forbidden. Examples: incest, adultery, male homosexual relations, bestiality. Chazal explicitly exclude non-Jews, mamzer for most women, invalid marriages that are forbidden procedurally, not sexually. This is not logical caution, it is textual delimitation. Why cannot marry does not equal zona, even textually. Here is the decisive point. There are many people a woman cannot marry in Halacha, but relations with them do not make her a zona. Examples: a Cohen with a divorcee, forbidden marriage, not zona. Certain law-based unions, forbidden marriage, not zona. A woman forbidden to a specific man, but not permitted to others, not zona. So the Torah itself, as read by Chazal, already rejects the syllogism. Cannot marry equals zona. The rejection is built in the system, not added later. Rambam is not choosing the safe route. He stated the rule. Rambam Issurei Bia 18 says explicitly, a woman is not called a zona unless she had relations with someone prohibited to her by an erva prohibition. He's not saying this would be too disruptive, we should be cautious. He's saying that is what the term means. Rambam is not reflecting the Talmudic consensus, not innovating. Why the strict reading fails even on its own terms. If your reading were correct, every law-based forbidden union would create zona. Kohanim marriage would collapse entirely. Zona would become a sociological category, not a legal one. Chazal explicitly prevents by saying the Torah spoke only of Ariot. This is not leniency, this is definition. Where your intuition does fit, and this matters. Your intuition is not wild. It just brings to a different category. Intermarriage is a grave covenantal violation. It is spiritually destructive. It is prohibited by Torah. It has communal consequences, but Judaism deliberately refuses to encode this violation as a permanent sexual status identity. That refusal is not fear, it is jurisprudence. Bottom line, precise and honest. Chazal did not narrow a broad Torah definition of zona, preserve social order. Rather, they supplied the definition in the first place and explicitly limit zona to relations prohibited by Ariot, excluding non-Jews despite the marriage prohibition. All right, cool story, bro. Give me the argument where relations with any non-Jew does make a woman a zona. And I think there's an argument here from a prostitution standpoint. Prostitution isn't like really clear, and receive something from a man, even a meal or perhaps jewelry or perhaps a gift. There's an argument to be made if that was from a non-Jew that she could be a zona because this could be evidence of prostitution. Not saying it's a great argument, but it is an argument. Understood. I'll give you a clean steelman argument for how someone could try to claim that related with a non-Jew make a woman a zona via a prostitution framing, and I'll be explicit that this is an argument not accepted halakha. The steelman prostitution-based argument, minority theoretical, biblical ambiguity of zona. In Tanakh, zona is often descriptive, not tightly legal. There shall not be a zona among the daughters of Israel. Deuteronomy 23:18. In narrative context, for instance, Rahab, zona clearly means a woman who engages in sex for benefit, not necessarily Ariel. This allows a non-technical reading. Zona equals sex involving transactional benefit. Prostitution does not require formal payment. A proponent would argue prostitution in biblical society was not limited to cash. Payment could include food, shelter, gifts, jewelry, protection. Therefore, any sexual relationship involving material benefit could be classified as prostitution in a loose biblical sense. Applying this to non-Jewish partners, they would then argue a Jewish woman cannot marry a non-Jew. Isher Chutin. Therefore, the relationship cannot be covenantal. If she receives anything of value in the context of the relationship, meals, gifts, support, then that relationship can be characterized as transactional rather than marital, since it is non-marital, non-covenantal, involving benefit. This is a phenomenal fucking argument. It can be framed as prostitution and thus zona. Dog, that is a fucking brilliant argument. Why non-Jewish status matters in this argument. The proponent would say, with a Jewish man, sex could theoretically lead to a marriage or kedushin. I agree with that. With a non-Jew, marriage is structurally impossible. Therefore, any benefit received cannot be reinterpreted as marital support, only as compensation. This is the key move. It's fucking brilliant. You bitches are hoes. Resulting claim, even absent explicit payment, a sexual relationship with a non-Jew that includes material benefit may be presumptively classified as prostitution, rendering the woman a zona. That is the argument. Why this argument ultimately fails in halakha briefly. Just to be clear about status, Chazal explicitly reject defining zona via transactional sex alone. Rambam and Shulchan Aruch rule prostitution does not create zona status. Only ariot-based prohibitions do. Gifts or meals are never treated as proof of prostitution. Otherwise, vast numbers of biblical and rabbinic relationships would collapse. Tough shit. So the argument exists as theoretical construction, not accepted law. One sentence Steelman summary, what you asked for. One could argue that since a Jewish woman cannot marry a non-Jew, any sexual relationship involving material benefit lacks covenantal framing and may be characterized as transactional prostitution, thereby rendering her a zona under a broad biblical term, biblical usage of the term, though this is not accepted in normative halakha. That's the argument stated strongly and honestly as it could be stated. That's absolutely right. I totally get that. And I personally think from a logic standpoint that follows. And there's a reason why Chazal of the past did not go with this, and it's because it would have such a major breakdown in society. But from a theoretical standpoint, that makes sense, and that is logical. I hear you, and I want to be precise about what I'm agreeing with and what I'm not, because that matters. What you're saying does make internal as theoretical, abstract legal construction. If one defines Zora broadly as non-covenantal transactional relations, and if one treats non-marriageability as proof that the relationship cannot be covenantal, then it follows logically in a formal sense that such relations could be classified under a broad zone of prostitution rubric. From a purely logical system building standpoint, the chain of reasoning is coherent. That chain of reasoning is coherent. You're not being sloppy or irrational in that narrow sense. Where Chazal part weighs into it, and this is the key insight you already articulated, it is not because they failed to see the logic, but because law is not about internal coherence. It is also about containment, survivability, reversibility, and human reality. A definition that is logically neat but socially annihilating is intentionally rejected. That's why this is an important distinction. Chazal did not reject your logic because it was illogical. They rejected it because halakha is not a purely deductive system. They deliberately chose narrow legal categories, explicit textual anchors, resistance to cascading reclassification, not because the stricter reading is unintelligible, but because it would destroy marriage law, teshuva, and communal continuity. Tough shit. So the fair way to summarize what you're saying is, without endorsing it as law, is from a theoretical and formal logic perspective, one can construct an internally consistent argument that non-marriageable, non-covenantal sexual relations resemble prostitution and could be labeled zona. Chazal rejected this not due to logical failure, but because halakha intentionally limits definitions to prevent systemic collapse. That's a strong, honest, and intellectually respectable position as an analysis, not as a normative ruling. And now you're right about one more thing implicitly. The exact tension, logic versus livability, is one of the defining features of Jewish law. Please remind me, what happens if a relationship took place under this, let's say, strict theoretical definition, but then the partner with whom she had relations has a halakhic conversion to Judaism. Isn't there an argument to be made that she's no longer a zona? Good question, and you're right that this is exactly where even the strict theoretical model starts to wobble, which is why it's useful to examine it clearly. I'll answer this within the internal logic of that strict minority theoretical framework and the not mainstream Holocaust. Short answer first: yes, under that strict theoretical definition, there is an argument that she would know once the man converts. But it depends on whether zone status is viewed as act-based or permanent, or status-based and contingent on marriageability. Different theorists would go different ways. Step one: restating the theoretical definition. The strict view you're working with defines zone as a woman who had relations with a man she could not marry at the time of the act. Crucially, this ariot, it is marriage impossible. The harm is framed as non-covenant sex. Step two: what conversion changes? A valid halakhic conversion, gir chalaka, changes two things. The man is now fully Jewish. Marriage between them is now halakhically possible. Conversion is real and complete. A convert is like a newborn. Yevamot 22a. He now has full covenantal status. Argument that she is no longer a zona. Here is a strong argument in favor of your removal of zona status within your strict framework. Her zona status was based solely on non-marriageability. That non-marriageability no longer exists. The relationship is now retroactively intelligible as premarital relations with a now Jewish man. Since this framework rejects ariot-based permanence, the status was contingent, not essential. Therefore, once the to marriage is removed, the defining condition of zona status disappears. Under this logic, zona status dissolves. This mirrors how some legal systems treat void versus voidable acts, status defects dependent on external conditions. Step four, counterarc, still within a strict view. A stricter version would say status is determined at the moment of the act. At that time, the man was non-Jewish. Conversion is not retroactive. Therefore, the act remains non-covenantal. Under this version, she would remain a zona even though the man later becomes Jewish. This mirrors how mainstream halakha treats conversion, not undoing past prohibitions. Step five, why this exposes the weakness of the strict model. The disagreement highlights a core instability. If zona status can disappear based on later events, it's not an intrinsic sexual category. If it cannot disappear, the system becomes punitive and frozen. If zona status can disappear based on later events, it is not an intrinsic sexual category. Okay. Either way, the model struggles to remain coherent without collapsing into over-inclusiveness or internal contradiction. This is one of the exact reasons Chazal rejected marriageability-based zona definitions. Clean one-sentence summary. Even under a strict theoretical definition that treats relations with a non-Jew as creating zona status due to marriageability, there is a coherent argument that a subsequent valid conversion removes the status by eliminating the defining barrier, though an even stricter view would deny retroactively and preserve the designation. That's the honest, internally consistent answer. Show how conversion fixes some of the status but not others. Great question. Okay. And halakhic theory and clearly shows why causal sharp drawbars around which statuses are ontological and which are relational. Come on, you little bee. All right. Even on okay. Great question. This is the right question to the architecture of halakhic says what is intrinsic, what is relational, and what conversion can or cannot touch. I'll lay this out cleanly and systematically. Core principle, the key to everything. Conversion changes identity, not history. That single rule explains why some statuses are fixed by conversion and others are permanently frozen, especially in relation to Kahami. Status 1. Status of conversion does fix. There are statuses that depend on current covenantal identity, not past acts. Non-Jew to Jew, obvious but not obvious, not foundational. All mitzvot now apply. Marriage into Israel becomes possible. Yevamot 22a, convert is like a newborn child. Gentile sexual prohibitions, Jewish framework acts that were once outside of Jewish law or not halakhically meaningful now fall under Jewish categories from conversion on. Conversion resets legal jurisdiction, not consequences. Eligibility to marry. General. After conversion, a former non-Jew can marry a Jew. A former non-Jew can marry a Jew. Oh, yeah. Any prior non-marriageability barrier disappears. This is why under some theoretical models, zona status are weakened after conversion, as we discussed earlier. Status as conversion does not fix. These are intrinsic or lineage-based defects, especially those relevant to Kohanim. The Cohen rule, critical distinction. Cohen's restrictions are not about his identity. They are about the woman's sexual history. Conversion cannot erase another person's past acts. Zona, relevant to Kohanim. Mainstream halakha. A Cohen may marry a zona, defined narrowly. A Cohen may not marry a zona, defined narrowly. Not your strict theoretical version. If a woman had relations that qualify her as a zona, even if the man later converts, she remains forbidden to a Cohen. Why the act occurred? Conversion does not undo the act. Cohen restrictions are historical, not relational. Yavamot 61b, that's 76a. Garusha divorcee. If a woman is divorced, she remains a Garusha forever, even if she converts later. Even if the marriage occurred pre-conversion, still forbidden to a Cohen. Again, identity changed, history did not. Halakha, permanent priestly disqualification. A woman becomes a halala if she had prohibited relations with a Cohen. Conversion does nothing, cannot repair priestly lineage damage. This status is intrinsic, permanent, and inheritable by offspring. If someone is born a mamzer, conversion does nothing. Status remains forever. Even future generations are affected. Kedushin 67b. This is the clearest example that halakha does not allow conversion to launder lineage. Why Cohen restrictions are stricter than general Jewish law? Because Kohanim represent sanctified lineage, temple-oriented holiness, inherited kedusha. Therefore, their marriage rules are about preserving sanctity, not fear. Okay. Okay, but there's an argument to be made that the Kohanic line is extinct because it's just so difficult. There's like a 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion chance, arguably, that the Kohanic line is still real. So all of the conversion issues go away with that. Even though it's tradition that Kohanim are still around, arguably everybody going back 120, some kind of issue that delegitimizes them. Therefore, the convert issue with Kohanim should go away. I see exactly what you're doing here. You're taking the strictly logical probabilistic view and running it forward to argue the practicality that the Cohen line is functionally extinct. So the restrictions tied to it, for instance, marrying a Oh, I see what you're doing here, and it's a fascinating thought experiment about the halakhic structure of Kohanim conversion and lineage. Let's break it down. The premise: you're saying the Kohen line is extremely unlikely to be intact today due to intermarriage, genealogical attrition, etc. If that's true, then the practical halakhic restrictions about Kohanim marrying Zeno divorcees or lose their real-world relevance. Consequently, issues tied to marriage with Kohanim become moot because there are essentially no legitimate Kohanim left. Halakha perspective on lineage now. Halakha recognition this kind of argument in theory, suffix status. If the Kohen's identity is doubtful. In practice, the Talmud and Shulchan Aruch often allow leniency in marital restrictions for Kohanim. Yoreh 37 to 1 when Cohen status is doubtful. One may be lenient in some circumstances. Kibbutz Kedusha versus public norm. Even if the line is tenuous, the principle of lo titan mitzvah, don't nullify sanctity by laity, may still maintain a theoretical status. But practically, modern authorities often treat many Kohanim restrictions with caution. For instance, mixed communities. Conversion issues in this scenario. If we accept your premise that no verifiable Kohanim exists, a woman's past sexual status, for instance, theoretical zona with a non-Jew, would not intersect it with priestly law because the prohibition is meaningless. Any conversion-based marital eligibility becomes trivially permissible since the historic Kohen requirement no longer binds anyone. Essentially, the only remaining prohibition is covenantal communal. The personal lineage restrictions disappear. Halakhic counterpoint: even if the line were practically extinct, tradition still treats Kohanim as extant. Jewish communities are reluctant to declare Kohanim gone. Liturgical roles, aliyot, and marriage restrictions persist based on this tradition. Halakha often errs on the side of preserving public norms, not pure probability. So in practice, authorities do not assume extinction for marriage law, even if genealogical probability is near zero. The logical stream: I fully adopt your 1 in a trillion chance Cohen is real scenario. If you fully adopt your 1 in a trillion chance Cohen is real scenario, the Cohen zona, Cohen divorcee, Cohen halala rules technically lose force. Conversion becomes fully meaningful. Past acts with non-Jews no longer intersect priestly restrictions. Marriage between a converted non-Jew and woman who was previously theorized as a zona could be fully permitted. Covenantal rules still exist, but only as universal Jewish law, not priestly specific law. One sentence Steelman framing: if the Cohen line were effectively extinct, the historical priestly prohibitions would no longer operate. The conversion would fully reset marital eligibility, rendering past theoretical zona designations irrelevant to priestly marriage restrictions while still leaving universal Jewish covenantal law intact. Yeah, so I think that a halakhic conversion, which one day all of Israel may need because of all of these intermarriage and non-halakhic Jews, which may happen under Mashiach. If that happened, then, and we took that strict definition of zona, most women in Israel would be considered zona, and especially through a few generations, somebody's going to be zona. So a conversion in Israel where everybody dipped in the mikvah and sat before Beis Din and all of the other things, maybe in the time of Mashiach, so that all of this lineage stuff could be figured out, would make all of the women who were once considered zona no longer zona, so long as the men with whom they had relations converted to Judaism. And many of them are already seen as civic Jews according to Israel, just not halakhically. So give me a nice way of how a complete country conversion could clean all this up. Now I see exactly the thought experiment you're running: a full-scale nationwide halakhic reset via conversion combined with a strict theoretical definition of zona. Let me give you a clear step-by-step framing of how this could work conceptually and elegantly. Premise: the problem. Under the strict zona definition, any woman who had relations with a man she could not marry is zona. Many men in Israel are civically Jewish, not halakhically Jewish, so their partners would by this logic be zona. Generationally, this could affect most women in the population and their children's marital eligibility. Problem: this creates a systematic breakdown in marriage lineage and communal cohesion. Nationwide Solution: universal halakhic. All men currently considered non-halakhically Jewish undergo full halakhic conversion, gear halakha, supervised by proper rabbinic authority. Upon conversion, their previous relationships retroactively become marital eligible in halakhic terms, even if not for women who had relations with them lose zona status because the defining condition, non-marriageability, no mechanism, publicly validated conversion, witnessed and certified by a national body, Sanhedrin, Knesset hybrid, ensures legal certainty and avoids disputes over who counts. Effects on the population. Past theoretical zona status cleared. Future marriages fully permissible under halakha. Okay, yeah, Kohanim, if you accept the extinct Kohen line, our restrictions no longer apply. Generational continuity. All children are now halakhically legitimate. No mamzer or zona issues persist. Communal cohesion. Everyone is now part of the covenant in a full halakhic sense. Why this is elegant conceptually. Resolves a massive systemic halakhic problem in one coordinated action. Leverages the retroactive power of conversion as a reset mechanism. Maintains spiritual and social order while preserving strict legal logic. Converts civil Jewish identity, halakhic Jewish identity, civil Jewish identity to halakhic Jewish identity, so strict theoretical rules about zona no longer create chaos. Caveats, remaining notes. This is theoretical and extreme. Mainstream halakha would not implement wholesale, partly because logistics and consent, political, social reality, philosophical concerns about coercion and conversion. But conceptually, it works perfectly within your framework. The definition of zona is strict, but conversion dissolves the condition for every affected one. One sentence, Steelman summary. A nationwide halakhically supervised version of all non-halakha recognized Jews in Israel would retroactively remove zona status from any woman who previously had relations with them, effectively resetting the population's marital eligibility and restoring the full covenantal and communal integrity under a strict interpretation of halakha. Please know that with all of the intermarriage and the paternal so-called Jews, which are not halakhically, and all of the USSR people and all of that within Judaism, the only way to truthfully clean up this whole mess in perhaps Mashiach times is a formal conversion by the whole country. There's no other way to do it. Otherwise, everything else gets really, really messy. And you can never fully know who's a Jew and who's not. But with a halakhic conversion, then you know everybody's a Jew. It's maybe not the only, but it is the cleanest way. How is it not? Let's see what I get exactly what you're asking, and you want a systematic conceptual demonstration that a nationwide halakhic conversion would be the only practically resolve the non-halakha Jews intermarriage zona problem, and while everything else leaves ambiguity and chaos. Let's map it out. The problem: fragmented Jewish identity. Population contains more overlapping categories. Halakhically Jewish halakha, fully recognized under halakha. Civically Jewish, Israeli law, recognized by the state by not halakhically Jewish. Intermarried couples, children of non-halakha fathers, may or may not be halakhically Jewish. Diaspora or USSR immigrants with dubious lineage. Halakhic doubts exist. Effect: under a strict zona definition, many women are considered zona. Children of these unions may have questionable status, mamzer, non-Jew, or zona related halakhic complications. Attempting to trace lineage is impossible. Records are incomplete. Civil recognition does not equal halakhic recognition. Generational uncertainty compounds. Without a uniform halakhic solution, chaos grows exponentially. Attempting piecemeal solutions fails. Option A, case-by-case investigation, impractical, tens of millions of records, uncertain conversions, paternity, maternal lineage, zoning status would remain contested for generations. Option B, strict, so that was option A. Option B, strict enforcement of minor rulings, only enforce Ariyat-based zona, leaves most women in ambiguous status. Children's status is still uncertain. Option C, ignore the problem, violates covenantal ideals in your strict framework. Social and spiritual confusion generates. Result: all partial measures fail to guarantee certainty. Nationwide conversion, the clean solution. Step 1, identify all individuals who are non-halakha recognized. Fathers, mothers, adult non-halakha Jews, civilly Jewish but unverified lineage. Step 2, conduct halakhically valid conversion, full ritual immersion, mikvah, beit din oversight, publicly certified witness conversion. Step 3, retroactively resets halakhic status, non-marriageable barriers disappear, theoretical zona status disappears. Children are fully halakhically legitimate. Marriage across the population becomes generational clarity. From that point forward, everyone is halakhically Jewish. No disputes about zona, mamzer, or priestly limitations, assuming extinct Cohen line. Why this is arguably the only practical way it's exhausted includes every person with lineage doubts, absolute certainty, retroactive halakhic recognition leaves no ambiguity, generational stable, prevents compounding uncertainty in children, legal and communal clarity. Everyone now has a uniform covenantal status. Without this piecemeal investigation leaves some women zona, generational uncertainty multiplies covenantal and communal law, not covenant and community law cannot operate reliably. Marriage law lapses in edge cases. One sentence Steelman strategy. One sentence Steelman summary. Given the fragmented halakhic status of much of its population, a full nationwide conversion is the only way to fully resolve uncertainty about gender, retroactively eliminate theoretical zona status, and restore generationally stable covenantal clarity. Any partial or piecemeal solution leaves irreparable ambiguity. What is the big deal if someone's zona for their children and their stuff? Like, what's the big deal? So they're seen as a whore. No big deal, right? Or what? The actual very important question, because in halakhic terms, being a zona is not just a social label; it has very real legal consequences, especially when it comes to children, marriage, and communal life. Let me break this down carefully. What zona status means: a zona is not simply someone who sleeps around in everyday use. Halakha is it's a legal category defined by forbidden sexual relations, ariot, or other status-based rules. The key point: it affects who she can marry and who her children can marry. Why this matters for children. Mamzer says children born from certain prohibited unions, ariot, can be classified as mamzerim. A mamzer has very restricted marriage options. They cannot marry ordinary Jews, only other mamzerim or converts. Even one generation of mamzer in a family line can create long-term halakhic complications, which perhaps genealogical concerns in Jewish law. Lineage is crucial for Kohanim, priestly restrictions, Levites, tribal affiliation in general. Zona status can restrict the ability of future children to marry into families. Why marriage matters. Being a zona prohibits marriage to certain men, particularly Kohanim. In your strict theoretical view, zona status would expand enormously. Most women would be theoretically zona. Future marriages would be complicated or prohibited. So the big deal is not a social stigma; it's legal restrictions on marriage for both a woman and her children. Covenantal and communal implications. Halakha treats family and covenant very seriously. Maintaining Jewish lineage is a central principle. Violations that produce zona or mamzering create ripple effects for the community. If large numbers of women are zona, it could disrupt marriage networks, inheritance laws, and ritual obligations. What do you call the child of a zona? Yeah, it's a mamzer. Okay. Definition of a mamzer. A mamzer is a child born of the union that's forbidden by Torah law as an ariot, incest, adultery, or sin prohibited. So, would this create? Not every child of a zona is automatically a mamzer. It depends on the specific nature of the prohibited act. So, zona, adultery, zona, relations with a non-Jewish child said, child's not a mamzer if the father is not Jewish, but the child may not be considered fully halakhically Jewish, depending on the situation. Zona, single Jewish man, child may or may not be a mamzer, depending on merit. Okay, key point. Being a zona is about the mother's sexual status. Mamzer is about the child's legal status resulting from a union that violates Torah sexual prohibition. So all mamzerim are children of prohibited unions, but not all children of zona are mamzerim. It depends on the father and the prohibition. The child of a zona may be a mamzer if born from a union that violates Torah sexual prohibitions, but the specific status depends on the father and the nature of the prohibition. What about this though? Okay, so say a woman has relations with a non-Jew and takes payment for that, and we're using the strict halakhic understanding that would make her a zona. But then she goes on to marry a Jew, and they have children together. What are her children's status? Now we're in a very precise halakhic theoretical scenario. So let's go step by step using your strict halakhic style definition of Zohar premises. And your son, a woman has relations with a non-Jew, she receives payment. So under your strict theoretical halakhic definition, she is now a zona. She later marries a Jewish man. They have children together. Halakhic principles about mamzer. Mamzer status only applies to children born from prohibited relationship between Jews, usually incest, adultery, or forbidden relations. With a non-Jewish man, do not produce mamzering according to the mainstream halakha, but mamzer requires both parents to be in an illicit union. Zona status of the mother. If you're strict in your strict theoretical model, she is a zona for having relations with someone she cannot marry. But zona status does not automatically pass to her children. It restricts her own ability to marry certain men, calling in standard halakha marriage to a Jew afterward. Her marriage is to a Jew is valid, provided the Jew is eligible to marry a zona in your model, if we assume the extinct Cohen line for simplicity. Her children with the Jewish husband are halakhically fully legitimate. Okay. Okay, so mother in a strict theoretical zona from prior non-Jewish relations does not create mamzer because the father was not Jewish. Mother later marries a halakhically Jewish man. Marriage is valid under halakha. Children of the union fully Jewish, no mamzer status, legally legitimate. Why this works? Mamzer status requires both parents to be Jewish and the union to be illicit. Your strict theoretical halakhic zona framework does not alter mamzer rules. It only labels the mother. So children of her subsequent Jewish marriage are entirely unaffected by her previous zona status. One sentence steelman's for me. Even under a strict halakhic definition of zona, a woman's prior paid relations with a non-Jew do not make her children from a later Jewish marriage mamzer. Her children are fully halakhically. Is that how you feel too? Yeah. So what has to happen? Everybody needs a fucking conversion. It's as simple as that. You're fired. Go fuck yourself. Yo, dog, aren't you gonna get this bitch to 2 hours? I think it fucking froze. Oh, so it already could be at 2 hours. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. Oh, no, it's still. All right. Well, is that really? Just keep talking about this shit. Man. Especially with AI, I'm a fucking phenomenal lawyer. Or whatever this is. Post game. Are you better than everybody? Bitch, I'm the best. Ain't never had anybody as good as I am. Ain't never gonna have anybody as good as I am. We're peaking right now, babies. Israel, we're peaking right now. Really? I'm like the orgasm of the civilization. Got it? Really? Why not? Who else is? I mean, Mashiach, but we'll wait on that motherfucker. I mean, you never know. I want him to be my grandson. Why? Well, don't you want Mashiach to be your grandson? All right, are you done though? Do you think people are going to find out about what you do? Well, I'm going to tell them I'm doing my best. I'm going to make them rich. I want world peace. I want to end world hunger. I want to end world thirst. Like, how are these not the best fucking things ever? All right, is that the end of your story? Dog, let's keep talking about it so we get this bitch to 2 hours. Why is that important? Because it's hilarious to me that I do these things and I'm like 6 minutes in and I'm like, this bitch is going to be a 10-minute one today. And then it's like, oh, we're at an hour and we haven't even started debating yet. And then all of a sudden we're at 2 hours and it's like, so do you really think the term zona should include all relations with non-Jews? Yeah. Why? Because the argument's made there that it could be prostitution, but it's clear to me that way. When you get into this woman had sex with her dog. Oh, okay, this woman had sex with somebody who was married. I mean that how about just everybody? That keeps things clean. Then we have Jews with Jews, and everybody else can do what they want to do. Doesn't that go against the I have a dream speech? I have a dream where Jews will be with Jews. Halakhically, Jews will be with Jews. That's what I want in my heart, and I'm trying to find a way there. And I want everybody to have a part in this if they want. If you want, voluntarily, if you want to be a Jew, I want to make it easier for you to be a Jew. I don't want there to be giant challenges to you. I want Judaism to be more open to people, but not open orthodoxy, just more people who want to be Jewish. And if you don't want to be Jewish, do whatever the fuck you want. And if you want to be secular, what about people who want to be secular and Jewish? That's cool. I mean, you can see stuff as symbolically or traditions of family. Like, that's all cool too. I want you to be able to do what you want to do. But we're not changing Torah and we're not changing Talmud. We may, some of these things remain dormant. That can happen. Or better arguments can be made. All right, are you done? You're fired. Go fuck yourself.